from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. And welcome. It's the Friday night edition of the program. We're live and national. Happy to be here. It's a true blessing to be on this microphone with you guys. We're live and national, by the way. So that means you can call in anytime you like. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And George Santos has been set free. Now, George Santos, as you know, was put in jail on a bunch of charges, fraud, this, that, whatever, right? They forced him out of Congress. This was something that I was saying at the time. I don't know that it was, I think it was a little bit harsh, personally. I figured, let him finish his term and whatnot. But it went the way it went. That's how they did it, and that's fine. But I would have preferred that they wouldn't have gone as hard because I think we could have used that extra seat in Congress. Anyway, be it as it may, he's out. He's been, the sentence has been commuted. President Trump commuting George Santos's sentence. And I'm curious to see, what the next step in the journey is for George Santos. Somebody I met some years ago, entertaining guy, nice guy. Let's see what's in store. As I get more on that, I'll bring it to you. What else we got? There's a story here that I want to share with you. And it's Jack Smith. Jack Smith has been referred to the Department of Justice for misconduct. So there's a probe into Jack Smith on that. And this, I guess, is no surprise, right? At the time that Jack Smith was doing what he did, the analysis that at least we got on our program was always that he was prosecuting a case he knew he would lose. And we knew that because he had a track record of prosecuting cases that he would lose. And that's it. So the chickens are now home to roost. So Jack Smith, we'll see what happens there. I don't know. It's not an indictment or anything. It's just, an investigation into Jack Smith. But very interesting stuff. Let me see. I want to jump back into this story about George Santos. President Trump, earlier today in the evening, just a while ago, he said that he commuted this prison sentence for George Santos and released him. Why? Because he could do that because he's president. Santos, 37 years old, served in the House for less than a year before he was expelled under a cloud of scandal back in 2023. And let me see what he got here. He asked Trump for a direct pardon. I think Trump didn't give him a pardon, but he gave him a commutation. It's kind of like, hey, whatever time served, your sentence is now done. Yeah, right? That's it. President Trump doing what I think a lot of people didn't expect him to do. And Santos, who was a little bit rogue at times, according to this piece in CNBC, and I would say the same thing, right? And he was his own man for sure. He was mentioned in Trump's Truth Social post. Let me see. He was sentenced to 87 months in federal prison, and after pleading guilty, blah blah blah, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, he began serving his sentence in late July. And let me see if there's anything juicy here. Otherwise, I'm moving on. Yeah, that's basically it. That's, I don't want to bury the lead here. The lead is George Santos is out. I will invite him on the program. I'm guessing he's going to have his pick of the litter of who he does his, first free from jail interview with. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, what else do we have here? We've got, hold on, bear with me. It's Friday night and we're live. Trump and Zelensky Meeting at the White House, Trump says he wants to end the war without sending Tomahawk missiles, and scheduled to meet with Putin in 2 weeks. That's a big deal. So let me see if we can get into that in a little bit. And there's this other one here. Tomorrow's the big day, right? The No Kings protest. Everybody's ready for these. Apparently there's going to be, let me see. I'm going to say pretty much across the country, you're going to see these No Kings protests against Trump, against ICE, against this and against that. And I don't know if they're scheduled to be mostly peaceful, but you know how mostly peaceful works nowadays, right? That means we're going to blow up a few cars. We're going to throw rocks at the cops. We're going to mace the cops in the face. We're going to bring umbrellas and fight with the police. We're going to wave flags and use the flagpoles as spears to hurt people. I mean, that's what Antifa does, and that's usually who runs these things. So Monday's going to be an eventful night. President Trump is also scheduled to be in Israel on Monday. We're going to bring you the scoop on that. We're scheduled to speak with the former special envoy for anti-Semitism on Monday, so make sure you don't miss that. But tonight, we've got a bunch of things lined up for you. I think we have a pretty good show. I want to talk a little bit about Venezuela. Trump being very, very clear with Venezuela. You do not want to F around with us. I think we have a clip of that audio. Mr. Good, line it up and let me know when it's ready. Go right ahead.
President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to around with the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
That's President Trump today laying it down. Now, let me tell you what I think Trump's doing here, and I think it's pretty clear to me. President Trump has been very effective in identifying which countries are getting foreign investment from China and working to make sure that they decouple from China so that China doesn't have the amount of allies that it once did. And I think he's been pretty effective with that. Venezuela is just the most recent example. And this is a good thing for us, right? A weakened Venezuela that's not involved in the drug trade and is not getting money from China is a Venezuela that we can work with. Yesterday, or the day before, President Trump confirmed, or at least the White House confirmed, that there are CIA covert operations going on in Venezuela. We know that President Trump today said they don't want to F around with us, and he didn't bleep it out. He said, he said the F-bomb, which I thought was pretty, honestly, pretty over the top. I was like, oh my gosh, that's pretty serious stuff. He means business. So all that being said, you've got a lot of movement here, right? The opposition leader to Venezuela giving her Nobel Peace Prize to President Trump. If I didn't know better, I would say that Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered. And not that we're trying to do regime change, and maybe we are. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I'm not. Some of my friends might be. I'm not. But I do think that may happen. And if you look at the way Trump moves, he's not really the type to do that per se, but he's more the type to make sure we're safe, right? So if they keep sending these little drug boats here, he's going to keep blowing them up. And if you keep messing around, he's going to hit you a little harder. And I think we're at the point where it's like, look, I'm going to push back as much as I can to open up the door for whomever your biggest adversary is to come in and do what they got to do, so that Trump doesn't have to get his hands dirty. The U.S. doesn't have to get their hands dirty. We don't have to get involved in another foreign conflict, that in depth. And I think it's a brilliant move. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit with my buddy Chris Salcedo. He's scheduled to join us. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth on Monday because I want to talk about both the Javier Milei visit as well as the growing tensions with Venezuela. So there's a lot more to come. I want you to keep it locked right here. Of course, your thoughts, your phone calls, opinions are all welcome tonight. It's Friday night. We're live in National 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
man. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And it's Rich Valdes. I'm keeping you company all night long. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And I want to talk about a couple of things here. I mean, obviously, there was a big meeting between President Trump and Javier Milei, and growing improvements with the relationship with Argentina. At the same time that there are souring relationships, if you will, with Venezuela, which is probably a good thing for our country, a good thing for Venezuela, a good thing for Colombia, a good thing for the world. But I want to kind of zoom out a little bit, 30,000 feet, and play a clip of audio, really from our buddy Charlie Kirk, the late, great Charlie Kirk, talking about the importance of conservatism within the Hispanic community. And I want to frame the conversation in that context. Check this out.
Given the fact that I'm pretty sure you're more aware than anybody else that the Latino community really is moving to the right, and that I'm pretty sure we're going to surprise the Democrats this upcoming midterms election, that we're going to completely go to the right. But how do you think that me as a young Latino conservative, I can continue to educate and, get into their mind to show that the Republican or the conservative movement is more beneficial to us Latinos?
Every single day, remind the Latino and Hispanic community that it is white, woke liberals that want to teach your children that men can become pregnant. One of the reasons why the Latino Hispanic community is moving to the conservative direction is because they were conservative all along. And now that this insane postmodern deconstructionist policy of there's unlimited amounts of genders, men can become pregnant, we can have abortion up until the time of termination. Now, not only is that not popular, that is a threat to their way of life. I think social conservatism is the key to winning over the Latino and Hispanic community in the future. We should lean in on that. God bless you, men. Thank you.
That, again, the late Charlie Kirk speaking with a student of Hispanic descent at one of his many Turning Point USA events across the country. And I want to bring in the big guns for this, somebody who literally wrote the book on it. His name, Chris Salcedo. He's executive director of the Conservative Hispanic Society, host of the Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax TV. He's a radio host on KSEV. And he's the author of the book, The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, The New American Revolution. Chris Salcedo, welcome back.
Richie, my brother, how you doing?
I'm doing great, bro. And it's good to have you here. I appreciate you coming in. I know you do a morning show, so it's not easy for us to get you on here, but I'm glad that you're here now. And you heard what Charlie Kirk had to say, and I want to talk a little bit about, your reaction to that. And then kind of feather in, the latest with what's happening with things in South America. But your thoughts on the Charlie Kirk audio?
He's not wrong. I think the cultural aspect that the first one to lick that as far as the Latino community is going to win, because that opens your door. You start saying, hey, we're grounded in science. We believe that men are men and women are women, and no. Men cannot have babies. We're not into this gender bender stuff. You don't hit us upside the head with this Latinx BS. You don't bastardize the Spanish language with all of this kind of stuff. That's going to open the door. And then the other stuff that makes the world go around, that makes Latinos' world go around, frankly, everybody's world go around, that's when people start saying, okay, I'll hear what else you have to say about economics, about freedom, about liberty, about the ability to work hard and get an honest return for your money and be able to retain that money and not have to turn it over to a leftist, all-powerful government. That's when you got the full package. When you understand that, you know what, you just can't pop in and say, hey, I believe in God and you're going to win over Latinos. That's not going to happen.
Right.
What Charlie Kirk was talking about was leaning in, opening the door, and then that's what allows them to drop their guard, to listen to what you have to say. And hopefully the Republican that is speaking is talking conservatism, because that's the winning message. If it's a Republican like Mitch McConnell, or a Republican like Lisa Murkowski, or a Republican like John Cornyn of Texas, they wouldn't know conservatism if it was a snake and bit him in the butt. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, you can't just come with half of it. You can't just check one box, or you can't even just proclaim to check a box or two or three and then say, oh, I'm in and I've got your vote. You're going to have to come up with something real. And because the Latino community I mean, Richie, you've got family. I've got family. Most of us have worked with our hands in the past, have done manual labor, have done manual jobs. We know what it's like to work hard, and you're not going to reach somebody with pie in the sky government promises. You're going to have to tell them what it means to them in the real world. And frankly, the left-wingers don't have the tools, and the Republicans are losing the ability really fast to relate on a real level.
Amigos, we're on with Chris Salcedo from Newsmax TV. And Chris Salcedo, I think you're right. I think that the left is losing their grip on everything, though, not just Hispanics. I think they're losing their grip on a lot of things, and they're doubling down. The only people that have any grip left, in my opinion, are Bernie Sanders or on Mamdani, AOC, because they're really just going all in on Marxism, all in on anti-imperialism. We hate capitalism, tax the rich. It's a real Marxist message. Why do you think that's flourishing amongst, in particular, white liberals?
2 words: gov ed. That's it. The so-called public education system, which hasn't been public for a long time. Government education, the worst mistake, and we write about it extensively in the book, about how the government-run education system, the Republicans abandoned our people, abandoned our children, and even in conservative states like mine in Texas, have turned over our children to these left-wing kooks, freaks, and nuts. That's what's happened. And just recently, just this year, because of President Donald Trump and because of Governor Greg Abbott, fake Republicans were forced, under threat of losing their jobs, to actually pass parental school choice and education freedom, to start clawing back and empowering parents to have a modicum of control of what their kids are being taught inside of GovEd. The reason why we have 3 generations now who have been taught, hey, socialism and communism, hey, they can work. They just haven't been done right yet. You know, they can work in America. It's because of GovEd. It's because of these cultural Marxists who have infiltrated K through 12. And let's be honest, they've been part of the university system for about the last 40 years.
You know, I don't disagree with you at all. I think this is a huge problem. Not just the GovEd, honestly, even private post-secondary education, university level education, all of this stuff is leaning towards Marxism and kind of excluding any other thought process. So it's not like, hey, we're going to teach you about Karl Marx, but we're also going to teach you about, the fundamental principles of liberty. I don't know, here's a book from Mark Levin, right? That's not happening, Chris Salcedo. And sadly, no. Our kids or our family, our members, relatives, neighbors, everybody, our contemporaries, they're all getting stuck holding the bag.
Yeah, you get to major in Marxism nowadays, which sucks.
Well, let's pick up on that when we come back. Amigos, we're coming right back with Chris Salcedo, host of the Chris Salcedo Show, and you've seen him, obviously, in this amazing book that he's gotten. You make sure you get a copy, 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. We're coming right back with Chris Salcedo. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Look at Rich Valdes. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, America, welcome back. It's Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media, keeping you company all night long. We're live and national. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES, and your calls and thoughts and opinions are coming up right now. I want to continue our conversation with my fellow liberty-loving Latino, Chris Salcedo. He's executive director of the Conservative Hispanic Society and the host of the Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax TV and radio. Make sure you don't miss him on KSEV. We're on there too. And I want to switch gears and give you guys a treat, right? Because I know many of you had to put up with me saying, I happen to like Bad Bunny's music. I happen to like The Godfather. I happen to like a lot of things that people don't like, right? People don't like Robert De Niro. I love Robert De Niro's films. People don't like violence. I love violent films. So there's so many things that I like, and I find my choices in entertainment, clearly don't match my choices for cultural values. But hey, those are my guilty pleasures. What are you going to say? I watch Jersey Shore too. But I'm going to say this. I don't know where Chris Salcedo lies in this spectrum of things, but if he doesn't agree with me, that's okay, and I'm inviting him to school me and set me straight. And I want to talk about this topic that has really died down a little bit, Bad Bunny. And I will say first, very critical. I am very critical of anybody who doesn't want to stand up and honor the flag. It wasn't the national anthem; it was "God Bless America," but still, people are standing up with their hand on their heart. You don't want to put your hand on your heart. I was once somewhere where they did the national anthem of another country, and I didn't want to put my hand on my heart for their country. So I put my hands at my sides, but I stood up out of respect. And I think that's what should be done. So shame on you, Bad Bunny, for not doing that. But everything else, I say, hey, this is the NFL's playground. They are radical lefties. They do this all the time. Bad Bunny was at the Super Bowl in 2020 with Shakira and with J-Lo, and he sang in Spanish, and nobody complained about it then. So what gives, right? I want to bring back in Chris Salcedo. Chris Salcedo, I want to know, where do you land on this Bad Bunny stuff? And is it as serious as people are making out to be?
Well, look, I think that it's not the fact that Bad Bunny sings in Spanish. Spanish is a beautiful language. Shakira, if she was the headliner for the Super Bowl halftime, I don't think you'd have any controversy whatsoever.
And she was in 2020.
Yeah, you know what? And or if it was Julio Iglesias, or if it was Enrique Iglesias, if it was one of these individuals, Bad Bunny was chosen because it's almost like P. Diddy is casting an NFL Super Bowl halftime.
It's actually Jay-Z.
Yeah, well, P. Diddy, Jay-Z, whatever the hell. It's same difference, right? But the reason why Bad Bunny is controversial is because he hates the United States of America. He despises law enforcement, our laws, and he's openly advocating against our laws and law enforcement. And that's the only reason why he's controversial. I mean, frankly, I forgot he was a singer because all of his focus is on his anti-American, anti-law enforcement activism. That's what all these people. I think it was our good friend Laura Ingraham who wrote a book once called "Shut Up and Sing." We don't want to hear your politics. We don't want to hear about how much you hate America or how much of a left-wing kook you are. I grew up a fan, and my hero was Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise. Yeah. Of the Next Generation. I'm a big sci-fi buff, and then I come to find out that Patrick Stewart is a left-wing loon. I was a fan of Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah, was a fan of Whoopi Goldberg. Found out she was a left-wing loon, right? So if they had never come out with their politics, I never would have known, and they'd still be my heroes, right? So the problem I have with Bad Bunny is, it's like it's the music is almost beside the point. He was cast by the NFL to give a middle finger to the country and to appeal to a worldwide audience that hates America. That's you see all these NFL games going overseas now. They're expanding their market, and they're finding there are a whole bunch of leftist countries that hate the United States. So guess what? The NFL wants to make money off of that. And you know what? So to me, I could give a crap less about Bad Bunny. It's the National Football League that gets most of my scorn and ire, because they built this multi-billion-dollar empire off of backs of patriotism and good old-fashioned Americana, and they're turning their backs on America, and they're flipping us the bird for the almighty dollar. And I haven't been watching the NFL, Richie, since the whole kneeling for the flag thing.
Kaepernick.
I haven't been back, and I'm not going back. Yeah.
This is exactly the point I've been making, right? I think irrespective of my penchant for reggaeton, it's really that. It's that this is their business. They chose a long time ago, right, when they did this whole Kaepernick thing, when they really took a hard bend toward the left, and they said, hey, this is our lane. We've chosen to go this way. And I was shocked when all these my fellow conservatives were saying, "Oh my gosh, we're so upset." And I'm thinking, I didn't even know we watched NFL anymore. I thought we gave up with Kaepernick. So it was shocking to me. Now, I was thrilled when Turning Point said, "Hey, they're doing their own thing," because to me, that's truly the free market response, right? If you can complain all you want, but when you provide that alternative and you say, "Hey, look, we're going to bring a bunch of Americana here. We're going to bring a bunch of patriots that are going to do our thing." Amen. Praise God. Hallelujah. Right? If people want to go to the Bad Bunny thing, go for it. People want to go to the Charlie Kirk thing, go for it.
Well, Richie, they've got that alternative league The Rock started, and they don't do any of that kneeling, left-wing BS. They don't do any of that. So I watch some of their football, and I watch a lot of college ball where they don't allow that kind of garbage. And it is garbage. The National Football League is trash. The National Football League is garbage. They are catering to left-wing, anti-American kooks, freaks, and nuts. And great, that's where you want to go. You can do it without me, and without my patronage, and without my support. You've made your bed, now you lie in it. It's a marketplace, man. They've made their decision, and I've made mine. And some people will draw the line at watching football. Some people will draw the line on what movies they go to see or what music they listen to.
Right.
It all depends on what you can stomach, right? It's up to. I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do, but that's just me.
And that's my point, too. I say the same thing. Look, you do what you can handle, right? If you like that, you like that. I happen to like some of that stuff. I think Colbert is funny. Kimmel, not so much. Who's the other one? Fallon. I don't really watch any of those
Bill
shows.
Maher's
but
funny. Yeah,
Bill Maher,
funny.
also funny.
Yeah, and actually, he's actually right on a lot of the issues too. But and that's the whole thing. When you're in the entertainment business and you want to appeal or insult both sides, you're going to get everybody laughing with you, right? But Colbert, Kimmel, Fallon, they're all left-wing kooks.
They go off the deep end.
They're not equal opportunity offenders. Hey, Bill Maher is going after woke. He'll also go after conservatives. He'll also go after liberals. That's funny. That's comedy. That's real comedy. But we were told, what's his Chappelle? Chappelle was completely attacked for.
I love Chappelle.
I love Chappelle too.
I think he might be the funniest comedian ever.
Maybe. I mean, and you know what? Eddie Murphy, which I grew up on. Eddie Murphy couldn't do half of his routines today. I remember the routine about Mr. T and about Ralph Cramden and Ed Norton. Remember that? Oh no, yeah, he couldn't do those routines today because he would make some woke leftist upset and they'd boycott him. That's not comedy, man. That's when you can't laugh at yourself, which is what the left does. They can't laugh at themselves. That they sap the life and the vitality out of the culture, and that's what the left. That's the only thing that the left is good for.
That Chris Salcedo. I'm so glad you said that. That's my era too. Right, growing up with Eddie Murphy Raw, Eddie Murphy Delirious, these were incredibly vulgar and incredibly funny. What a talent, Eddie Murphy! Right?
Did you sit under your covers when Mom wasn't? When you thought Mom was listening?
I could have watched it if my parents were around.
you have your Walkman. I had my Walkman underneath the covers at night, so my mom couldn't know that I was listening to Eddie Murphy. I snuck listening to Eddie Murphy, and you know what? Eddie Murphy used to. Yeah, exactly. Eddie Murphy used to sneak and listen to Richard Pryor. In secret, so his mom wouldn't know he was listening to Richard Pryor.
That's funny. So, and me, for music, I sneak Bad Bunny. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned.
I like reggaeton too, man. It's like, I'm sure his music is fine, though I'm not an aficionado. I'm sure, and if that's all he was about, man, he wouldn't be on the radar. The reason why Bad Bunny's bad is because he hates this country. That's the reason why.
Yeah,
right?
well, I think that whole thing is a. It's a very tricky situation. I think there's a bunch of Puerto Ricans that think that independence is a good thing, and they don't realize that this is straight out of the page of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara in communist Cuba. And it's part of my penchant in life to try to educate them all and say, hey, look, let's argue. I want to argue with you about this because I think I'm going to win. And this November, in addition to Virginia and New York and New Jersey having big elections, there is a binding referendum in Puerto Rico for statehood, for associated free state, or for independent, to become its own country. And we'll see how it ends. The last 4 times they've voted for statehood. I think that's how it's going to go this time too, but we'll see. Chris Salcedo, before I run out of time, I want to make sure we plug the book again. The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. Let everybody know how they get 2 copies of this book, one for them and one to give away.
Go to Amazon. You just type in The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution, or my name, Chris Salcedo, and it's going to come up, and you can purchase it now. It's pre-order. It drops on December 9th. You can save a couple of bucks if you pre-order, so that's good. Pick up one for yourself. Pick up one for the liberty lover in your life, and it's going to be a great Christmas gift. And Richie, I got to tell you, man, as you know, the liberty-loving Latino moniker is something that I've been under for a long time, and I'm glad that so many others in our business have adopted it too. You know, that who are Latinos. But this book was personal, and this is the second time I've been on your show talking about it. And brother, it means the world to me that you gave me the time. It really does.
Brother, anytime you want, I'm here to help. I'm a big fan of yours. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do, and I wish you continued success. Godspeed, bro.
I'm a big fan of yours. Thanks, brother.
Amen. Chris Salcedo, a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Make sure you check out his show on Newsmax every day at 4 o'clock, and check out the book. And check out his website, chrissalcedo.com, chrissalcedo.com. Chris, thanks for being here, brother. I got to hit a hard one here. Hasta la próxima. But, folks, we're coming right back with your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And President Trump met with President Zelensky today in the White House, and they had a conversation about a number of things with respect to the Nobel Prize, drones, all stuff related to Venezuela, right? Lots of things going on there. And let me see, I'm kind of caught up between the shutdown and let me see, in this other clip that I have here regarding the Venezuela. So let me see. Give me a minute here. I'll figure out which one I want to use before I go to the calls. I think we're going to go with this one here. Let's go with number 5.
Well, you know, we resolved 8 others. It's funny how people say that. If you get this one, every time I do one, they forget about that one. I solved 8 wars. Go to Rwanda and the Congo. Talk about India and Pakistan. Look at Thailand. Look at all of the wars that we solved. And every time I solve one, they say, if you solve the next one, you're going to get the Nobel Prize. I didn't get a Nobel Prize. Somebody got it who's a very nice woman. Very nice. I don't know who she is, but she was very generous. So I don't care about all that stuff. I just care about saving lives. But this will be number 9. But every time I solve one, they said, sir, if you solve one more, you're going to be known as a peacekeeper. So to the best of my knowledge, we've never had a president that solved one war. Not one war. Bush started a war. A lot of them start wars, but they don't solve the wars. They don't settle them. And especially when they have nothing to do with us. I guess just about all of these wars had nothing to do with us. But I saved tens of millions of lives. The Prime Minister of Pakistan said, I saved millions of lives in interceding on Pakistan, and you look at Pakistan and India as an example. That would have been a bad one, 2 nuclear nations, right?
That is El Trumpito in the White House today. And listen, I agree with him. A rare moment of humility, right, from El Trumpito. Good for him. And I do believe this. I believe every word he's just said, that he cares about saving lives. He's not so concerned with the accolades. And listen, Trump is a billionaire from New York. He's a TV star. Everybody likes accolades. You don't get into this business if you don't like accolades. Everybody likes winning an award. Of course you do. Good for you. But I think he's truly motivated by saving lives, right? It's not the accolades that motivate him. They're nice. They're the icing on the cake. He does it because he wants to truly bring peace. Now, you might argue and say, well, his motive for peace is selfish. He wants everybody to be happy, so they'll spend money and they'll go to these expensive places that he builds. All right, maybe. I'll take it. I will take it. If that's the worst case scenario, why not, right? I don't think that's the case. Trump is not a warmonger. You never see him really going in that direction. He's always focused on peace, focused on making a deal, focused on expanding economic growth. That's just his MO. And I can't be mad at him for that. So anyway, I want to get to your calls. Let me tap in right here. Let's go to Paul. Paul's in Boise. Go right ahead, brother. You're on the air with me.
Good call, Salcedo. I watch him on Newsmax.
Oh, he's terrific.
Occasionally, yeah. I like when he reads something and he rolls his eyes. It's just obvious that
he's funny.
Somebody just doesn't know
it's
what
funny.
they're doing.
Salcedo was an actor and a news guy, like a straight news guy, and became a talk show host. And I think he's terrific.
That's funny. He could do all three. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I think it's good that what you said about Trumpito having humility today, inviting somebody into the White House and accepting the award that he accepted. I believe I heard you say that it was the peace one.
Yeah, the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, it was the woman who won the award is from Venezuela. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think she was in part nominated by Secretary of State Rubio, and back when he was a senator. And I think these things run behind. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if in 2026, President Trump is honored with a Nobel Peace Prize because of what happened in 2025. I think they kind of run a year behind is how they work. But
okay.
yeah, the woman that you're referencing from Venezuela, I think her name is Maria Corina. I forgot her last name. I think it's Machado. But she gave Trump her award.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Latin community, they know what's up. They believe in family. They believe in God. They believe in bearing children, putting them to work, and they know it. And then you look at the face on the people with blue hair and purple hair, and they got this look of bewilderment on them.
It's always like they're so puzzled, right, Paul? Yeah, they don't know if they're coming or going, and I don't think they're big fans of the family, that's for sure. Paul, I got to take a pause right here, but stick with me. Amigos, we're coming right back. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
What's up, America? It's Rich Valdes, and again, we're live and national. It's a Friday night. I'm happy to be here with you. We have lots to discuss. I can't get to a call right now. I wish I could, but music means I have to take a pause. But we're coming back with the rest of your calls and more, depending on what part of the country you're in. Some parts of the country, this is the end of the road. In others, we keep going. Hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Truly blessed and happy to be here with you this Friday evening. We're back for another hour, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And we're going to get into a bunch of things this hour, not the least of which is the ongoing genocide against Christians in Nigeria. Now, I want to be fair and say that there's genocides against Christians in Syria, in Nigeria, in many places of the world. In fact, I was watching something the other day, and it was eye-opening, right? And I wish I remembered, I really do. Forgive me, I'm not trying to discredit anybody or fail to give credit to anybody, but it was a speaker on a video and somewhere social media, and very eye-opening. And part of what he said was, when people attack Muslims, they call it Islamophobia. When people attack Jews, they call it anti-Semitism. When people attacked Asians, they call it Asian hate. And he was making the point that there was no real word like xenophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia. There was no word to describe the attack on Christians. And, what came to my mind was anti-Christian. I mean, I think we hear that often enough. But I understood his point, and his point was, it's okay to go against the Christians. They don't need to have a separate word like they do, one of these phobia words, right? Did you ever hear of, Christian phobia? No, right? Nobody's heard of that. And that was the point he was making, was that it's almost accepted everywhere to be able to attack Christians, and nobody cares. And I thought that was interesting. That's not necessarily a, wow moment, but a moment, right? So I said, we need to dig into that. So we're going to do that in a couple of minutes. We're going to dig into that topic. But I also wanted to share with you some of the things that I haven't done in a while, right? Because of the formatting of our show and adding some new stations, it's been difficult to do the show the way I used to do the show. Right? For example, I used to do the show an hour of interviews on some relatively trending news topic with a guest for that first hour. Second hour, we do a topical or entertainment or lifestyle related type of guest. And in the third hour, we did open phones across America. But in January this year, we kind of amended that a little bit to kind of make every hour little bits and pieces of that. Right? So instead of just waiting till the end to take the calls, we started taking calls every hour, which was something the callers wanted to do anyway. And I like. And what I feel like we've gotten away from, and I'm giving you a little bit of a little bit inside baseball here on the show, if you will. Jim Bohannon had a famous segment called The Offbeat. Something I didn't know very much about, but was very cool, right? I thought it was very cool. And in his absence, when I began to substitute for him, I didn't touch it, right? Because I didn't know the format of it. I knew it was something that he had put a lot of effort into, and it wasn't for me, right? It was his thing, not mine. So I just made sure we filled that time frame of the offbeat with just offbeat stories that were off the beaten path, not necessarily hard news stories or political stories or anything like that, but just things that were interesting, right? Like the time I talked about a brothel that opened up in Europe where all of the prostitutes were AI sex bots. They weren't even real humans. right? That was the red light, the AI red light district. I thought that was such an interesting story. It came out in the New York Post, and I said, I got to share this story with the audience, right? Because you don't see stuff like that every day. And many times, for whatever reason, these funny stories included animals, like, bear wandered into whatever, or, some sort of animal story eventually made its way onto this list of stories we did in the midnight hour. Lo and behold, this slowly but surely became known as the Midnight Zoo, because there was all these animal stories. Now, it didn't have to have an animal story, but it was just, that was typically the thing. So I bring that up to say, I feel like we haven't done enough Midnight Zoo lately. And you guys don't even know what that is. But, those of us that are, in the studio, we know what the Midnight Zoo is. And I wanted to share with you, and because there's so many hard news stories, and it's Friday, and pray tell is the word I'm going to use. Pray tell, I am done. I am done with all these hard news stories. And sometimes it's just fun to look at silly stories, right? Listen to this. Smucker's is suing Trader Joe's over what? Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Isn't that something? Smucker's is suing Trader Joe's, saying that their new PB&J sandwich is too similar to the Uncrustable. Now, the Uncrustable, as you know, is kind of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that's pre-made and has no crust, and, the edges are sealed. They're fantastic. Anyway, the Smucker's company is suing Trader Joe's, right, alleging that the grocery chain's new frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are too similar to their Uncrustables, and they filed the lawsuit. They filed this lawsuit in Ohio, and now Smucker's is saying that the boxes that Trader Joe's uses also violate the trademarks because they're the same blue color that they use. Now, I know that many supermarkets make a generic version of something. I've been seeing it my whole life. I grew up very poor, so we always got the generic version of whatever it was. And I just thought this was such an interesting thing here. Again, silly, for many people, meaningless. But for me, I love peanut butter and jelly. And since, I've been on this health trend the last couple of years, I don't even really eat peanut butter and jelly like I used to, right? I've had to buy natural peanut butter that's mixed with flaxseed. It's a great brand that I use, by the way. I use a brand called Earth Balance. And this stuff is phenomenal. It tastes like real peanut butter, but it's actually peanut butter and flaxseed, no sugar added, very low. I think it's 4 grams of carbs. It's fantastic. And you do that with keto bread and with, what's the other thing I use there? Oh, the sugar-free grape jelly. 0 carbs. And voila, you've got yourself a PB&J that is, I don't know, maybe about 6 to 8 grams of carbs, if that, and no sugar. Fantastic, right? If you're a low sugar guy like me, because you want to stay in shape. So anyway, I saw this and I thought, my goodness, this is just so interesting the way things are going these days. And for those of you that are thinking, Rich, why are we talking about peanut butter and jelly? Why? Because I love peanut butter and jelly. I think everybody does. And I've had but so much of the hard news political stories that I can handle. Plus, we're about to get into a very tough topic, right? We've got the topic I started with, which was people of the Christian faith being slaughtered because of their faith. People that live in Syria, people that live in Nigeria, that think that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. This is what they believe. It's what they profess. And it's what they're dying for. And the ones that aren't dying, they're having their churches torched to the ground. This isn't a way anybody should live. And it's going on. I think oftentimes we don't hear enough about it. So I'm hopeful that we're going to have a great conversation to raise some awareness. And we're going to do that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? but you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck. You are in a bubble. And again, I'm not a Christian, but they are systematically killing the Christians in Nigeria. They've killed over 100,000 since 2009. They've burned 18,000 churches. This is so much more. These are their Islamists, Boko Haram. This is so much more of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. They are literally attempting to wipe out the Christian population of an entire country. Where are the kids protesting this?
Yeah. Thank you. Because no one will talk about it, so thank you.
Absolutely.
That is comedian Bill Maher on his program talking about this really big issue. And we've talked about it a number of times on this program, and it seems like every week there's just a new number. The death toll goes up. Really, really sad stuff. And there are some people that are, putting the pedal to the metal here. Senator Ted Cruz from Texas and Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey have a bill that is urging the administration, the Trump administration, to make a designation in Nigeria and sanction Nigerian officials who facilitate or permit jihadist attacks against Christians and other religious minorities. And, everybody's waiting to see what the administration is going to do with this call. But very interesting stuff that's going on here. I mean, there seems to be an onslaught of killings against Christians, and this is truly a genocide, right? Like, there are less Christians today than there were yesterday. Unlike when you hear the term genocide thrown around in a lot of places, these people aren't disappearing. And again, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm trying to be accurate. I'm trying to make a point. And this is serious, right? Bill Maher mentioned it, and I'll repeat it. Boko Haram. And there are other Islamist groups that are brutally terrorizing Christians and non-Christians in northern Nigeria because of how they roll, right? They're militants. They are what they call Fulani Muslim herdsmen, and they're assaulting their Christian neighbors. And that's the bottom line. And it just keeps happening. Since 2009, this persecution has reported 18,000 churches destroyed, 50,000 Christians murdered, and 5 million more that have been displaced because of this. Absolute insanity. So I'm going to get to your calls momentarily. Bear with me. But I want to open up this conversation with Paul Teller, Senior Advisor at Advancing American Freedom. Paul Teller, welcome.
I appreciate you having me. So important you're doing this.
Oh, thank you, and I appreciate your time. Talk to me about what's going on here, because clearly there's a genocide going on, and while we might talk about it in radio and others are, putting out some stories, it seems to never really get the traction it deserves.
Yeah, and you wonder why, right? I mean, like, I was listening to, to kind of the lead-in to, having me on tonight. And yeah, you're exactly right. You're saying the media sources suck, right? Like, why is it so hard to get coverage on this? And it's not like it's 2 or 3 people in some random country. Like you said, we're talking about, I think since 2009, 185,000 people slaughtered is what they're saying. At least 2/3 of those Christians, probably more. The numbers I'm looking at too, 7,000 Christians murdered just this year, 2025. That's 2.5 9/11s just this year. And yet somehow that can't seem to get attention. I honestly, I don't get it. And here's the irony. You pointed this out too. The fake genocide in Gaza gets all kinds of attention where there's not actually a genocide. But where there's an actual genocide, where there's intention to deliberately wipe out an entire class of people, i.e. Christians in Nigeria, that seems to get, no attention, no real action. And so we're out there at Advancing American Freedom to say this needs attention, this needs sanctioning, this needs stoppage, right now.
Paul Teller, you guys are keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the Christian genocide. And in turn, are you dealing with relief agencies? Are you solely just lobbying the government to get action there? What's your plan of attack?
Yeah, exactly. So, we're an issue advocacy group founded after the first term of President Trump, Vice President Pence. Vice President Pence is the founder and, board member, if you will, of our organization. And he created it to basically just continue the fights from Trump 1. And this was a big one, right? I mean, in other words, President Trump back in the first administration declared Nigeria a country of particular concern, which implements, all kinds of restrictions, sanctions, trade controls, that kind of stuff. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris lifted those concerns. No idea why. The killings were still going on. We were talking about it then. Somehow they felt, what's the big deal? Not a huge concern.
And brutal killings, by the way, Paul, right? I mean, talking beheadings, burning people. I mean, just really wild stuff.
Oh, yeah. Slashing of women and children, kidnapping of pastors, and, of course, raping of women is a tactic of the jihadists, in Nigeria and beyond. Just horrific stuff that, we can hardly even say here on the radio. But again, Biden-Harris felt like, what's the big deal? It's not really concerning. So what we're asking the current administration, Trump-Vance, is to say, reissue that designation of Nigeria being a country of particular concern. And frankly, even better, I mean, that's great. But President Trump would be great if he would just call attention to this, just speak to it, right? He's got such a great bully pulpit. And if he just talks about this, into the large microphone that he's blessed to have, it could really save lives. It could end the killings and the tragedy and the murder and the genocide going on right now in Nigeria.
Well, I don't know if it's going to end the tragedy that's going on. President Trump talking about it might take a little bit more, but you're right. It's going to require some action for sure, and it's going to take it from the largest military in the world. I think that President Trump's comments today on Venezuela, they don't want to F around with us. That only came after we blew up 6 of their drug boats, right? Like sometimes you need some action to get people to pay attention. And what I was going to say, what people forget too is, Nigeria is not some, random small Rhode Island sized country with a few population, with a small population. Over 230 million people in this country. So this is a big deal. When you've got a systematic slaughtering of Christians in one of the world's largest nations, and the government is, either facilitating it there or at least, ignoring it, turning a blind eye, that's outrageous. And we need to be calling that out. We need to be punishing those folks who are responsible, or again, turning the blind eye and just stopping the killings. And by the way, too, if we can do that, it may also help discourage jihadists in other countries from either what they're doing now, current killings, or any future plans for slaughtering of Christians, Jews, and others. So, I mean, it could have benefits beyond Nigeria, too. Folks, we're on with Paul Teller, Senior Advisor at Advancing American Freedom. AdvancingAmericanFreedom.com is the website. We're going to come right back and continue our discussion on the genocide against Christians in Nigeria. Since 2009, Islamic jihadists have murdered 185,000 people, many of them Christians, and we're going to continue that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
It is a tragedy what is happening in Nigeria, and as you mentioned, other places in the world. But as it relates to Nigeria, I just sent a letter to Secretary Marco Rubio to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern. Now, what that means in practice and what that does is specifically one of the things it will do is limit security assistance and restrict and restrain security assistance to Nigeria. What does that mean? That means arms sales, train and equip, and a lot of these training programs that we're doing with Nigeria with the promise that they were going to go out and eliminate Boko Haram, which is one of the groups that are killing Christians in Nigeria. There's 3 groups really in all that are doing this, Boko Haram being one. IS Africa, which is ISIS aligned, and then the Fulanis, who are also part of this, which that's where you see a lot of this indiscriminate killing. There's also a letter that's been put forward by Senator Ted Cruz to ask to do the exact same thing. But I do want to point something out. President Trump had done this in his first term.
Yes.
President Biden took this designation off. And so what we're asking is for this designation to be put back on because it did have an effect at preventing killings of Christians.
That's Congressman Riley Moore, a Republican from West Virginia. He was on Fox and Friends just a couple of days ago, again, echoing so much of what we've just been discussing, and I think it's worthy of being repeated. The conversation we're having right now with Paul Teller, Senior Advisor at AAF, Advancing American Freedom. I keep saying that wrong, but the website for that, advancingamericanfreedom.com. And the genocide of Christians in Nigeria, an ongoing problem, something we've talked about I'm going to say at least, every 5 or 6 weeks here as the death toll goes up. And sadly, we can talk about it and create awareness, but we need more. And I think this sanction, this CPC designation is really a step in the right direction. Paul Teller, when you hear Congressman Moore talk about these things, does it give you encouragement?
It really does. He's a fantastic congressman. Get to know him if you haven't already. Great freshman from West Virginia. We knew him before he was congressman. He was the financial officer over there. But so glad that he's taking on this fight because the more leaders with a bully pulpit, a very loud microphone, louder than maybe the rest of us have, the more people like that take on this fight, I think the more sunshine we could shed on it. And that's what these jihadists, these killers hate, is being noticed, right? They want to do this without folks really caring around the world. And so if we can change that, we can really save lives.
Well, I hate what the jihadists do. I hate that they're killing Christians, and as often as we can talk about it, we're going to. Talk to us about, the rest of your strategy on, what you guys are doing and how our audience can help to prevent the genocide of Christians.
Yeah, really appreciate it. I think, again, a big part of it is awareness. So what I would do right now for all the listeners is first connect with these congressmen, Congressman Riley Moore, Senator Ted Cruz, who's got the legislation you talked about. Support it, encourage others to support it, write in, email in. If you're in other districts, tell those congressmen to co-sponsor these bills. Let's get them to the House floor, the Senate floor. Let's get it to President Trump's desk. And just keep talking about it. And frankly, again, just this kind of exposure, this kind of awareness really helps because the killing is so much easier to be done in shadows, right? When no one cares, when no one's really looking.
Nobody's looking, things are happening.
Right? Yeah. But if we can say, no, we're on to you, we're following you, we're watching you, we're going to punish you, that could just stop some folks. And frankly, if it stops even just a handful of the killings, great. Then we've saved some lives. So hopefully it stops it altogether through an ongoing campaign, an exposure campaign.
Amigos, we're on with Paul Teller. Paul Teller's got a very recent op-ed in the Federalist. Make sure you check that out just 2 days ago. Amid the genocide of Nigerian Christians, Congress must act. I'm signing on to this because I think Christians ought to live. It's a wild idea, everybody.
Yeah.
Don't
Imagine
kill the
that.
Christians.
Well, and here's the thing, too, and I should say that, so I'm a member of the Jewish faith, and many of us Jews have really come to know in recent years that our best defenders, our best allies, are believing Christians. And so many of us feel this is returning the favor. How can Jews and others stand up for believing Christians who are being slaughtered for their faith? I mean, that's the thing, right? In Nigeria, they're being slaughtered specifically because they are Christians. Churches are being attacked because it's a place of Christian worship. It's outrageous. The Jewish faith, the Christian faith, are the basis for Western civilization, for freedom, for human flourishing. We need to protect it. We need to save those lives. And so we have to team up and to stop these horrific killings.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that anymore. I think that's a very fair statement. And when you start to see this barbarism, when you start to see, what the Crusades look like coming back to life, happening in Nigeria and elsewhere, it's time for people to wake up. It's roll or get rolled over. And I'm not making a call to arms, but I am saying you can't take it lying down, right? If calling your congressman is, the action you got to take, make sure you call twice, right? I mean, this is,
no, that's right.
We're staring down the barrel here.
No, that's the thing, too. And actually, you make a great point, right? Because you don't even have to look that far regionally to say, like, remember certain countries that used to be flourishing hearts of Christianity and no longer are. Turkey, Egypt, right, and other countries in the region that were just the centers of Christianity, but are no longer because of jihadists. It was a different word at the time, but Muslim-based killings and eliminations of the Christian faith. It's outrageous. We can't allow it to stand. And America, as a leader in the free world and defender of the Judeo-Christian tradition, Western civilization, it's our duty, right? Religious liberty is in our First Amendment, right? That's right there. So we've got to stand up for it worldwide if we're going to continue to be that beacon of hope and freedom for the world.
Yeah, amen to that. On an adjacent topic, Paul Teller, today I had to get some detailing done on my car, and I dropped it off at a place, and there was a lunch truck. So I went over to a breakfast truck, and I went over and I bought a cup of coffee and an egg sandwich. And I'm talking to the guy, and he had this, Middle Eastern accent, but I couldn't place it. And I was like, hey, where are you from? And he's like, I'm from Egypt. I'm from Egypt. And I said, oh, hello, and we were talking. And, I couldn't help it. I'm me. And I was like, why is there such a big wall? Why won't Jordan let anybody in from Gaza? Why won't you let anybody in from Gaza? And because I wanted to hear from him. He wasn't here that long. He's been in this country 2 years. And he said, it was really remarkable what he said. He said, if we don't have border, we have no country. I said, you must have been listening to Trump, bro.
That's right. That's right. And what's amazing, too, like, this is what's even more outrageous about all that, is that most Palestinians are actually Jordanians, right? They're ethnically Jordan. They're from Jordan. And yet Jordan won't let these folks back in to their own country. I mean, it just speaks to the knowledge that they have, and that really a lot of the world does have, including many Arabs, many Muslims, that the Palestinians have just been bred to hate. Right? They're not creating a positive, growing, healty society. They just want to hate Jews.
That's where the conversation went. It was very fascinating to me. He said, we had a problem with the Muslim Brotherhood, and he said, and he was trying to make an example to me, because he didn't know what I knew. So he was trying to explain everything to me in a very rudimentary way. And he said, it's kind of like, he said, you have many people that are Muslims and they don't believe what they believe. And he kept making this distinction, saying, he's like, they believe different, very strong. He kept saying, they're very strong. It's very different. They like to hurt people. And I just thought it was remarkable that you can see this, because I think oftentimes here, I'm going to say in the West, and in particular in New York City, we will paint with a broad brush, right? We'll be like, A or B, right? Black or white. And here was this guy from Egypt who is a Muslim telling me, we're not like the Palestinians. They're very strong. He was trying to say radical, that, they were radical and that they didn't believe in peace. And it was just a fascinating conversation. I wish I could have recorded it to play it for the audience, because it to me was really, it's kind of how I grew up. I grew up with people from all faiths. Yeah. And I never had a problem. I grew up in a relatively Jewish neighborhood, but it was in Brooklyn, New York. And it was not, we didn't have problems. We just didn't have them. And today it's like there's problems everywhere you go.
Yeah, and you just wonder, right? I mean, think about how many hundreds of billions of dollars have poured in to Palestinian territories over the last few decades. And if even a reasonable fraction of that have been used for economic growth, education, healthcare, even frankly to use, President Trump's vision, building some resort towns along the beautiful Mediterranean coast. Imagine what could be for those people there, and what those areas could be now. It could be thriving, just wonderful places to live and be. And obviously it's just the opposite. It's just terror tunnels and violence and hatred. It's just terrible.
It is. Paul Teller, I'm out of time here, but let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with you and follow you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so again, as you mentioned before, advancingamericanfreedom.com, or you can find me on X or Twitter at pteller, at PTELLER. And it'd be great to connect with you guys.
Outstanding. Godspeed to you, my brother. Keep up the good work. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Talk soon.
You bet. Amigos, your thoughts and calls right now. Texas, Florida, Charleston, South Carolina. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Amigos, to the phones we go. It's Open Phone America. I'm going to go to Jerome calling us from Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, what's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, I want to congratulate the Republican Party on letting the scumbag, thief, liar, cheat, dirtbag George Santos out of prison, okay? It didn't take him long, okay? Congratulations on that. And I just want to know, man, how you keep this Republican act up, man? Oh, America, we don't have the problems that these other countries have. Oh, yeah, we're not like we don't have those problems. Oh, yeah, all we have is like 200 years where we had slavery, you know. I guess you forgot about that, huh? We don't have the problems these other countries have.
It is a lot easier to forget about slavery than it is to forget about this government shutdown that your friends in Washington have put together.
Oh, it's the Democrats' fault, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been 3 votes, and every time there's a vote, you got 50-something Republicans voting to open the government and 40-something Democrats voting to close the government.
Hey, I hope they never come to an agreement, okay?
I'm with you.
I want to see you Republicans suffer.
I'm not suffering because the government's closed. I don't use the government. I really don't care. I mean, I did spend an extra 40. They said it was going to be 40 minutes circling the airport because of air traffic control. Ended up being like 15 minutes. Thank God. But I don't really have much use for the government. Every time I have a guest on, a congressman, they're like, we want to get this done. And I get that. I don't want to see people go without getting paid. But I do ultimately want to see the government cut in half if I can. And this seems to be our best shot, Jerome.
No, I don't want to see people suffer. But when it comes to punishing the Republicans for the crap that they do, you can't stick it to them hard enough, okay?
Stick it to the man.
I feel. Yeah, stick it to the Republican man.
Stick it to the Republican man. Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Thank you, sir. I always appreciate a good disagreeer, and you're one of the best in the business. I appreciate it. Let us continue. Where are we going? We're going to Tom. He's in Cypress, Texas, KSEV. Tom, go right ahead.
Oh, I'm thrilled to get through, Rich.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
I'm going pretty well, thank you. I'm going far afield here from Cypress, Texas, but I'm concerned about the mayor's race in New York City because it has implications for the whole country. And
yeah, I was born in New York City. I know I know what you feel.
I've been listening to you for a while, but anyway, I have a little suggestion here. Next time you talk to Curtis Lewa, maybe, or his campaign people, there's a great piece that I've heard played on some other conservative radio shows by Mike Rowe. You familiar with Mike Rowe?
Sure. Yeah, he's famous.
Oh, okay. Now, he did a story, a short, it's about, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 minutes about Boris Yeltsin. In, I guess it was probably late 80s or maybe 1990, somewhere along in there. He was visiting NASA here in Houston, and he just went on a little side trip into a local grocery store. And Mike Rowe speaks better than I do. You have to listen to Mike Rowe's
and he's got great pipes,
rendition.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And mine are pretty mediocre, I'm sure. But anyway, the long and the short of it is that Boris Yeltsin went in the store and his eyes were just bugged out, and then he had this epiphany about how bad communism sucks. Because in the piece he admits that because of price controls and all this rubbish that guys like Zoran want to do, there's nothing on the shelves in the stores, even for the party members. The party members, don't have as much stuff at the local grocery store in Seabrook.
Tom, the biggest critics of communism have always been people that have fled communism. And they get here and they go, wow, look at all your stores, how filled they are. Look at how many things you can do in this wonderful, blessed America. I have friends from Cuba, friends from Venezuela, friends from China, people that really can tell you a story or three. And when you meet these people, I always say it, they can smell communism coming a mile away around the corner. And when they tell you this is no good, I listen. Because you know what? Like I told you, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. It's not communist. But when you grow up in America, you tend to not really be able to see this stuff the way that others can. So I'm always grateful for somebody who has that type of experience. And I'm grateful for your call as well in Cypress, Texas. Thanks for listening to the show. I appreciate it. Shout out to KSEV, amazing station. That's the home of Rich Valdes and Chris Salcedo, by the way. I'm at night. He's in the morning. We're locking it down. Liberty-loving Latinos. Thank you, sir, for your call. Folks, I'm coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes, 833-4-VALDES. Let's go to Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, streaming the show tonight from WLS. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. So tomorrow's going to be No King's Day, and I'm going to be looking to see if there's going to be a lot of young people. I've been listening to some of the phone calls today, and they're going to be coming out with a pretend to be centrist, which is pretty ridiculous, a progressive pretending to be a centrist. So they're probably going to go for somebody like Newsom, Shapiro, and it's probably not going to be AOC or Bernie Sanders, like some people in the media think it might be. So be on the lookout for something like that going into the new year.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
No, you know what? I do believe it. I think they've been trying this angle for a while. This kind of, hey, look, I'm just I'm not into politics, but I just don't like the fact that, we're losing our democracy. I don't like the fact that Trump is a fascist, right? They've tried this, and it doesn't work because they're trying to fool people that are a lot smarter than them. And most people, I think, realize what Trump is doing. Listen, you've listened to the show regularly. You've heard me talk about my friend Ruben. He came here on a jet ski from Cuba. I saw him 2 hours ago, or 3, and he said, I want to give you congratulations because President Trump's doing a great job with peace. It killed him to say that. Killed him to say it. But he said, I'm a stand-up guy, and I have to give kudos where they're due. He can't stand Trump, right? People, left and right, Obama, Biden, even Kamala Harris, they're all giving Trump credit because he's not a king. He's an American president that's seeking peace. So I think their centrist lies aren't going to go very far. The truth is actually speaking very loudly. And kudos to President Trump for speaking that truth very loudly. Eduardo in Tampa, Florida, thanks for your call. Shout out to WLS. And amigos, we continue with your thoughts, calls, and reactions straight ahead. It's Rich Valdes Friday night. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We're back for another hour. We are live and national. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Blessed to be here with you this evening. The phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And Christians are being slaughtered in Nigeria. The government is still partially shut down. Peace is still ongoing with the hostages released and Hamas saying, we're not going to disarm, we're going to disarm, we're not going to disarm, but we're going to kill all these people we don't like before we do. Things are crazy in that part of the world. Keep your hands together in prayer for peace for that region. But thankfully, the hostages have been released. And the reality is, when you are playing poker, and you get to that point where you have to show your cards, you really got nothing left, right? It's time to call. And that's where they are. Hamas put their cards on the table. They gave up the hostages. They're going back and forth over some remains. And I don't mean to discredit, disrespect, or devalue any of these remains. But the bottom line is they aren't in a position to really negotiate. They're in a position to lose. And if they're smart, they're going to take heed to the warning. And I think they are. I mean, their strategy has always been, let's do a ceasefire so we can re-up. I listened to the, and I played it on this program earlier this week, I believe, Tuesday. The son of one of the Hamas founders, he did an interview, and he was talking about how Hamas can never truly commit to peace because peace is not part of Hamas's founding document. It's not part of their genetic makeup. They're designed to eliminate Israel. So they can't really engage in peace. He said it would be a temporary peace. In fact, he even used the number 15. He said it can't be for even more than 15 years. They can only agree to a ceasefire, to a truce is the word he used. They can agree to a truce for 15 years, but no more. And listen, if you're in that part of the world and you're dealing with all that, somebody tells you, hey, we're going to shut up for 15 years. Hey, thank you. Thank you. I'll take it. Shutting up for 15 years sounds like a lot better than, we got to come back in and flatten everything out, right? So just a wild time to be alive and a crazy series of events that are going on there. John Bolton still indicted. There were some videos of him turning himself in today and carrying a briefcase that still had a White House tag on it. I guess that was the tag he used to get in and out of the White House. And there was a lot of talk about, him having this tag. And I thought to myself, not everybody gets a chance to work in the White House, right? I mean, let's be real here. Most of us, when we go somewhere cool, we either buy a souvenir or we get one, right? I've been to some pretty cool, fancy places, right? A couple of years back, I'll share a quick story with you. I went to the Plaza Hotel, the one from all the movies, and at the time, not at the time. At the time that Trump was in the Plaza Hotel, like in the movie Home Alone, he owned that hotel. He'd since sold it, but I went there a couple of years ago for a Christmas party, and the section we were in was closed. It wasn't open to the public. It was actually only opened for this party, and it was pretty cool to be in that part of the Plaza Hotel that nobody else could go to. And you better believe I have one of their very cool napkins, right, that says the Plaza on it as a souvenir, right, because it's pretty cool. And I try to get one wherever I go that's kind of cool and bring back, a cocktail napkin, all right? I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I have a little stack of them. And I guess scrapbook for the scrapbook I don't have. But my point is, people can be nostalgic, and they look at these things. And that's kind of the state of affairs that we're in, right? We're seeing lots of things happen. Things change very, very quickly. And what are we going to do, right? We've got to take it as it comes. So I want to move on from that topic. I want to get into something else. I had it right in front of me. Bear with me, folks. It's Friday, and I'm letting my hair down a little bit. Yes, here we go. I want to talk about how things are evolving politically right? And I don't want to talk about politics per se, but I want to talk about politically, things are changing in many areas, right? They're changing in education. They're changing in from the macro perspective, right? The 30,000 foot level. From culturally, I think we're seeing a lot of change. And this is, to me, one of the bigger issues, right? How long do we see this change? And which direction is the change going in, right? If you think for a moment, some of us might say, well, the change is going in the direction of good and God and Christianity, if you will, right? You think of, I don't know, one of the largest campus movements, right? Organizations, Turning Point USA, and how the impact that they've had, right? And again, it was this unique organization run by Charlie Kirk, an even more unique individual, God rest his soul, where he talked about liberty and freedom from a very classical liberal perspective, right? A real conservative perspective. The perspective of John Locke and Montesquieu and Alexis de Tocqueville, right? It's classic. And combining that, because those guys were all, formed by the thinking of those in the Enlightenment, and adding to that the gospel, being a theologian in his own right, really trying to bring forth the good news. And to me, it's a winning combination, right? When you can combine your worldview that's based on the Bible with the truth of classic teaching and writing in America, through the Enlightenment. And I think that marked a pivotal point in America for us. And I would say the momentum was trending towards liberty. Some might argue against me. I don't have numbers on that, but others think we're losing it. The NFL has gone total woke. Even Rich Valdes likes Bad Bunny, right? What are we going to do now? We're losing all the good guys. I don't know the answer, which direction we're going in. I think that there are, movements afoot all over, and I'm not ignorant to them, that's for sure, right? I realize that there's an active communist movement. There's an active, I'm going to call it a progressive movement, which I think is an offshoot of the communist movement, afoot in America, on our campuses, now in our high schools. So where are we, though? If we had to measure this, where are we? Are we headed towards progressivism? Are we headed towards conservatism? Is this a move towards collectivism, or are we headed towards liberty and individualism? I know where I want to go, but I'm curious to know where you think we're headed. So here's the number, 833-482-5337, getting to your calls momentarily. And I want to bring in author, columnist, and attorney Leslie Corbly. We've had her on before for her poetry book, and she's got a new book called Progressive Prejudice. And I want to talk about that when we connect with her. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Maybe you could frame it this way. The left is fighting for all these other marginalized people. Black people, brown people, gay people, trans people, women, poor people, homeless people, incarcerated people. All these people facing systemic persecution. These are all the people the left are fighting for and advocating for. Men just kind of fall through the cracks. Now, who doesn't care about all those people I just listed? Conservatives. So they're there to catch the men who just fell through the cracks because they don't have to spend any of their time talking about those marginalized people, period. So maybe that's partially why they're the ones who get to have a monopoly on men's lib. Their bastardized version of men's lib, obviously. Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe you could frame it this way.
Well, that was getting good. That's a clip from DeMath TV. I was actually really enthralled. I had not listened to their podcast before, but very interesting clip. And talking about how everyone is blaming someone for the oppression of the next man, and men somehow fall through the cracks when it comes to the left. And it seemed to me a perfect segue to talk about a book that's coming out on October 21st by Leslie Corbly called Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. And I want to talk about the Devouring Mother and that whole concept, and really overall about this progressive prejudice, because I think that is a fantastic title that truly really hits the nail on the head. During the break, I was talking to our producer in the studio, Mr. Good, and we were talking about how, maybe there was a time where if you were a Black American or even any other ethnic minority, you might have been somehow oppressed, right? We did have slavery in this country and whatnot, but today we live in a country where a Black guy, a very rich one, I think he's a billionaire, married to a Black lady who's probably the most famous person on the planet, Beyonce, right? Jay-Z and Beyonce. He's picking the talent for the Super Bowl, and they picked a Puerto Rican guy. So you tell me who's oppressed here, right? I don't think it's the minorities. I think minorities are making off very well here. So what gives, right? And that's why I want to talk about progressive prejudice, exposing the devouring mother with Leslie Corbly. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this book that's coming out on October 21st, because I think it's a great title, Progressive Prejudice. Why'd you pick that?
Because I think that there's a real struggle in progressive cultures with understanding that progressives are capable of prejudice. I think it tends to, when we think of prejudice culturally right now, it almost inherently tied to conservative or religious ideologies and belief systems. And I think that's something that's changing. I think the public is becoming much more aware of the prejudice that exists on the left side of the aisle. And so I thought that was a really good title for it, especially when paired with The Devouring Mother, because I think prejudice, again, on the left is hard to identify, and we struggle to really critique and understand female forms of malevolence and perpetration of harm.
All right. Well, let's talk about female malevolence, because I once had a conversation with a psychologist about this. In particular, it was something called Queen Bee Syndrome, and it was about how some women have this Queen Bee Syndrome, and they pick on other women, and literally they're the ones doing the oppressing. And it was just a fascinating concept. So tell us more.
Yes. So in my opinion, female forms of violence tend to be more covert in a way. So they tend to focus less on the physical, right? When a man engages in some form of violence, it's much more likely to be physical. There's going to be scars of some kind. But I used an example in the book, actually, of Munchausen by proxy, which is a form of abuse that is perpetrated almost exclusively by women, and it's perpetrated against those who are dependent. So usually they're children or someone else that's dependent on their care. And the way it works is the woman will make up some kind of fictitious disorder the individual has, and then they glean a lot of benefit from being perceived, the tension that comes with being perceived as being a good caretaker. So their whole identity is in taking care of the dependent. And so rather than actually taking care of them, they're, sort of treating fictitious disorders for their own self-aggrandizement. And that's what I would use that as a good metaphor, or as a good example of what the devouring mother is in practice. But obviously, when you think about that dynamic, it's a really difficult dynamic to identify in the real world. So proving Munchausen by proxy would be really hard, because you'd have to prove that someone was being treated for disorders they don't have. Now, obviously, medical professionals aren't going to treat someone for a disorder they think they don't have, right? So these people will shop around for someone who will, a doctor or another professional, and this could also be in the mental health context, right, who will give a quote-unquote appropriate diagnosis that is in accordance with what the perpetrator of abuse wants to view the victim as. So that's where, again, when you think about how that works structurally, if you take that out of the realm of just the pure physical with medical disorders and you put it in the realm of the emotional, you can see how that would become an easy avenue to engage in perpetration of abuse that's virtually impossible to physically identify. And that's where I think we really struggle with female forms of violence. They don't have the same outward facing nature of they don't have the same outward evidence that male perpetrations of harm tend to have. Now, obviously, men can engage in covert forms of abuse. It's just that it's not as much the MO. So again, much housing by proxy. It's like 90%, over 90 or 95% perpetrated by women. There's almost no cases that involve a male perpetrator.
Right now, and I just want to, for my own benefit, I've had many wonderful conversations with like mental health professionals and survivors of different things, and what I'm hearing here is it's almost like you tell me if I'm getting it right. Of a mom, let's say a mom who's overbearing and kind of presents their child in the light of, oh, that's my kid, she's really shy, or oh, she's really an introvert, or when the kid may not be any of those things, but that's the mother kind of imposing that on the kid, and this eventually causing this permanent injury.
Yes, absolutely. I think, that the majority of much housing by proxy perpetrators will be moms. So when I say a caretaker, it's usually a child. It's usually a mother-child dynamic in that situation. It's interesting because I also practice family law. In addition to having, if anyone who reads the books, you can see that I have my own experience with a rather horrifying mom. But in family law, it's one of the hardest things I have to tell my clients because I practice father's rights. And I have to explain over and over that, unfortunately, the types of concerns a lot of them have with a mother's parenting are not necessarily actionable in court because they don't come with evidence. And, U.S. courts are evidentiary places. I mean, you can't go walk into a courthouse and expect a judge to be able to understand a purely emotional dynamic. And so, as unfortunate as that may be, I do think it's really important for the national conversation or the cultural conversation to be able to incorporate types of abuse that are maybe counterintuitive or not something that we're typically used to seeing. And when it comes to women in particular, those on the left think of women as victims. And so the concept of this kind of critique, I think, feels maybe to them like punching down. And I think we really need to start viewing prejudice as something that everyone has, which is one of the reasons I use the term progressive prejudice. It's sort of trying to evoke in the reader the idea that no belief system is without prejudice, and no belief system exists in the world that doesn't put some people on its margins. And I think we need to have a more full understanding of that. And that includes, the populations that the left believes to be.
Right. Leslie Corbly, stand by. I'm sorry the music kicked in that way, but we're going to come right back. I'm Rich Valdes.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. Getting to your calls right now, so make sure you give me a call if you want to get in. We've got about 20 more minutes for phone calls. But I want to wrap up with Leslie Corbly. We're talking about her brand new book. It's coming out this month on the 21st of next week, called Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. And the Devouring Mother is part of what I want to talk about. Leslie Corbly, just moments ago, you shared with us that you had your own challenging situation with your mother. Talk to us about that and how that worked into the book.
Sure. So it's actually one of the most important elements of the book. I think the first word I learned, if I remember correctly, was the word half aborted, because that's what my mother called me. And so from a very early age, I had a lot of interest in existential questions of right and wrong and philosophy, the value of human life, or whether human life had any value at all. And so growing up, I grew up in sort of a church environment, but I wasn't really myself religious. I was sort of curious about questions of morality, but I didn't consider myself to be a Christian internally. That wasn't really something you could voice in my parents' home. So I was, kind of going through my own faith journey, which is interesting because, while I wasn't sure whether I was a Christian, I was much more repulsed by progressive ideologies, particularly those on the left. So the things I heard espoused by politicians and those on the left, I found really repugnant. And the reason for that was what I viewed as such a cognitive dissonance on the left with the way that they talked about how their opponents dehumanized whatever historically marginalized group they thought they were fighting for that day, but they couldn't understand the dehumanization of humanity itself by dehumanizing children in utero. I found that to be just sort of so hypocritical and prejudicial, and that was just my view. And obviously that came from my background, but that does that thread goes throughout the whole book, where it talks a lot about the hypocrisy that comes from that. So, like, for example, I ran a social experiment when I went to college, because obviously no one there knew me, and I thought it would be really interesting. So I ran a social experiment where I asked the classmates of mine that were really pro-choice. I would start to ask them questions about who should and shouldn't essentially have been aborted, because one of their biggest lines of argument was that abortion prevents suffering from coming into the world. And so I would use my own life and ask them what they thought, and all of them, their opinion was you shouldn't have been, that person should have been born, that person's mother should have aborted her, like 100%. Wow. And so they had no clue they were telling me that. But again, right. It's a fascinating. It's like the veil lifts from your face, where you see that these are individuals who think they're bleeding hearts, and they're convinced they fight for the marginalized, and
that
they love
care.
everyone, and they're tolerant, and they care so much about people's feelings, and yet they're looking someone in the eye saying, "I wish you weren't alive.
We're dead." Yeah,
wild. They can't see it. It's crazy, right? And so, I always found it really, really hypocritical, and I've always thought that our cultural conversations need to engage more with these concepts. Now, I'm not saying someone's going to read the book and automatically be pro-life, but the point is those ideas are not scrutinized. Like the belief system of those on the left has for a very long time received an unearned moral authority, but it's not scrutinized in the way it would be if it were a different set of ideas. And I don't think that that's good for culture, frankly. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think
I agree.
Ideas should be scrutinized.
From the cultural perspective, it's very destructive. But getting back to this devouring mother, because I think it's a fascinating concept that I think a lot of moms go through, because it's a cyclical pattern, right? They went through it with their mom or grandma, right? And it just kind of trickles down. And I think oftentimes it's described as being a strong woman or the matriarch, and you've got to be tough to make it in this life. And they don't realize the damage that, women in particular, I think, are doing to their daughters.
I absolutely 100% agree. And I think it's not discussed a lot because, I think it's hard to have cultural conversations about toxic forms of female power right now, because it's seen as it's just hard to have those conversations because of how
nobody says toxic femininity, right? They only say toxic masculinity.
Some do, but it's very niche, and I think it needs to be a little broader. And it's also, for what's worth, really hard to pin down. And that's one of the things that I think makes it hard, is that because the child is so connected to the mother and devouring mother situation, for the child to understand they're being harmed by their mother, I don't think most people understand how radical it is internally and how destabilizing it is for the individual to admit that they were harmed in that way by their mother. So I knew growing up that I didn't have a good relationship with my mom, but one of the most difficult things for me to do, and I write about this in the book, was to recognize that not only had she emotionally damaged me, but she had actually engaged in sexually predatory behavior as well. And they're culturally taboo concepts, and they're not something that's easy for the victim to admit.
Right. Now, when you say this, and I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to understand. When you say sexually taboo things, you mean saying oh, look at my young daughter, look how pretty she is, or look how she looks in a miniskirt, or is it more than that?
Oh, no. She raped me. So she was what I'm trying to get at though is that there's an ability to see sort of predatory behavior as it relates to fathers and daughters that I think is much harder for society to see when it's daughters versus mothers. And I think that's, again, in some ways, the victim's the only person with access to enough intimate information to know that that's occurred. And so that's what I mean by I think there needs to be more awareness, because there's really fewer safeguards, external safeguards, right? So an example of that I wrote about in the book was actually how medical staff, so I was being treated for an infection as a child, the medical staff was concerned. And so they removed my father from the room, but they left the actual sexual predator in the exam room because they assumed my mother was safe.
Right.
And so it's a fascinating, again, I'm not saying we automatically change protocol and all moms should be removed from exam rooms. What I'm trying to get at is the alienating nature of this. And when you create oppressor classes like the left does, and you place them beyond the reach of engaging in perpetration of harm, and you sort of assume any critique of that group or that person relates to their immutable characteristic, whether that's sex or race or whatever it may be, you're placing the victims of their harm in a more isolated position socially. So, I mean, when I went to attempt to get therapeutic care, for example, for what occurred to me, I want to say it was the first 3 to 4 I eventually had to stop seeing female therapists because they would tell me it wasn't real. That didn't really occur. Or we think it was really your father. They didn't have a concept of that.
Wow.
And it was ideologically induced. And I mean, these are medical professionals. You walk in and you're actually very vulnerable because you're trying to say, I was harmed. I'm trying to get help here. And that's stymied by individuals who are within the system who have these ideological beliefs. Obviously, I'm not saying that's everyone in the system, but it does create a lot of damage. And so when people encounter this kind of prejudice, and it's all over, especially in the therapeutic world, it has real world consequences. And I just don't think we culturally have these kind of conversations because they're so difficult. So I'm not trying to convince everyone that women are predators and you should beware. But on the other hand, it's the type of harm that is extremely difficult to see. And I think when harms are difficult to see, we have to have some awareness of how those dynamics work outside of, just having some idea of how they work so that individuals who are harmed have verbiage and language to discuss what occurred to them.
Space to heal. Now, Leslie Corbly, number one, I want to say I'm sorry you went through what you went through. And part B of that is it is extraordinarily difficult for certain people. I'm going to use me as an example to understand certain concepts. And one of them being this. Many years ago, not many, but maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was, I think I was hosting this show or guest hosting my predecessor's show. And I wanted to do a different type of topic. And I saw an article on the cover of, or the main page of People magazine. And there was a woman, I believe her name is Jane Epstein. And there was a quote from her. And the quote was, "Sibling sexual abuse is an epidemic in America." I was blown away by this. I had never heard of this term, SSA, right? Sibling sexual abuse. I'd never heard it in my life. And I was like, this lady's nuts. She thinks that sibling sexual abuse is an epidemic. I was like, I've never even heard of this word. And again, me being a little bit, I guess, arrogant in that moment, I was thinking, I look at lots of news. I consume tons of information to do this program. And I'm thinking, if it was an epidemic, I would have heard of it. But I had not heard of it. So I asked my producer at the time, Richard Cementa, I said, hey, get me this lady, please. I want to talk to her. And I had her on the show, and it blew me away. With the facts, the figures, the organization that she started, how many people she's helping. It's very similar to what you're telling me, right? You're telling me about, this sexual abuse by your mom that, I'm having a tough time wrapping my mind around because most people think this is it ends there, right? People, when parents get aggressive, physically aggressive, protecting their children, they say they're getting mama bear on them. It's kind of understood and ingrained in one's psyche that is the protector. And even though I think oftentimes dads are protectors as well, but you get my point. And, I think the conversation that you're bringing to the table is extraordinarily important. And I know we were scheduled to speak till around now, but are you able to stick around for a few more minutes? Because I'd like you to expound on what you talked about and really talk about how you could help victims, survivors do better in that area. Is that all right?
Absolutely. That's fine. I have the time.
Excellent. Thank you, Leslie Corbly. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
The voice of hope. You give us hope, and we thank you so much for that. You make things seem brighter.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdes, and we're in the throes of a fascinating conversation. A conversation about the latest book by Leslie Corbly, which is a personal account. She's a family attorney and an author, and the book is called Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. And while it talks conceptually about, contextualizing how someone that may have been through Munchausen or any other type of, difficult, challenging situation with the female violence, in particular, she shared about how she was raped by her own mother and how she's dealing with that, and how we need to open a conversation around topics like that so people understand that it's not always men that are these offenders, that it can be women. And it really is. It's fascinating on a lot of levels because there's a multiple, layers that are at play here. And Leslie Corbly, I want to get, in the few minutes we have remaining, I want to get your take on the best way to bring about awareness in this situation that will help the victim, or I should say the survivor.
Mm-hmm. I think the best way to help survivors or help people in this situation is to gain a better understanding of how emotions work. And I'll give an example of this. So it's interesting. It's something I pay attention to a lot when I interact with families in particular, is you can start to notice patterns of a child trying to protect the feeling of a parent. And it's very subtle until you see it. So, for example, I was interacting with a family a while ago at, like an event, whatever, like kind of a normal house event type thing. And one of the mothers had mentioned how difficult postpartum was, and the postpartum with her first child. And she made a comment about how, it was so hard, and she had almost hoped her second child miscarried because it was so difficult. Her first postpartum journey was so difficult. And it was fascinating, though, because she mentioned that, and I was sort of immediately, my ears perked up, and I thought that's really fascinating that you felt comfortable sharing that. There aren't very many other contexts in which I can imagine being that, direct about maybe wishing harm on another person, right? And I don't think she meant it maliciously.
Right.
This was just it's normalized behavior. And what was fascinating, though, is the way her oldest daughter, she made a comment about something about how, she had wished maybe that, something about wishing she had maybe been able to do something for the kids that she couldn't have. And the oldest daughter became very protective of her. Always say, "Oh, well, Mom, you did your best." Almost trying to soothe.
Justify.
The child was moving. Yes, the child was moving into the soothing role. And how can I take care of you? Because the child felt the mother threatened.
What is that process called? Is that called adultification or parentification?
It's parentification psychologically, but it's something that you can pick up on to kind of notice, maybe the patterns of this individual's relationship to their child isn't entirely healthy. Now, that doesn't mean it's abusive, but I think when you start to notice those patterns, you can allow the person who may have been victimized to speak to you. I'm not saying you try to meddle in anything. I think a lot of this is just allowing someone to speak, frankly, and not shutting down or not assuming because I think there's a tendency to assume good motives of mothers. And I'm not saying that's entirely bad, but in order to recognize where there's a damaging dynamic between a mother and a child, it almost requires that you allow for a child to say something negative about the parent. Right. And to sort of have space to sort of process it.
Yeah.
Yes, just to be able to speak about it. And it's not, and sometimes they're wrong for what it's worth. Yes, fathers can alienate mothers just like mothers can alienate fathers. But when it comes to the dynamic of which parent tends to be more into the microscope, I would say right now, moms tend to get more of a free pass than fathers. I mean, you can say things as a mother about your postpartum journey that a father could never dream to say, right? Yeah. I mean, right. And which is fair, again, to some degree fair enough because the mother went through it physically. But I do think there's something to be said for not imparting on children the idea that they're a burden. And women have free reign to do that right now. They can treat their children as if, you know, they're an extreme burden. So mothers can either be mother bears, in my opinion, but there's also a dynamic where they can essentially treat their children as if they're burdens and as if the child should be grateful for anything the mother gives, right? Because I brought you into this world and I could have taken you out, is sort of the attitude.
I got to tell you, growing up in poverty, I grew up with a lot of people. That was the dynamic that parents gave, oftentimes mothers. It's like, hey, you know, we good. we didn't need you, but we're here, so you better be happy.
And so I just don't think it's discussed, right? And I think if more people, or if there's conversations allowed that are actually honest about these dynamics of, well, what does this mean, and what does it actually tell children, for example, to tell them that they should be at the mercy of their mother. So that's why I included a lot of the abortion dialogue, because I think a lot of that really does cut at the core of the mother-child bond. So the mother-child relationship should be symbiotic, right? What's good for mother is good for baby and vice versa. And obviously the abortion, both rhetoric and reality, turns the mother-child bond into a power dynamic. And I don't think we as a culture have really contended with what that looks like in reality. So for example, without abortion being what it is in this country, my mother's words of calling me half aborted would have sort of not, they wouldn't have had as much power behind them, let's put it that way, because she was well aware that, oh, if you tell certain people, and she would tell me this growing up, yeah, if certain people know about your life, they will wish you hadn't been born. So she was kind of aware that there was a cultural dynamic to what she was doing, and that wouldn't exist but for the sort of aggressive love of abortion rights that exists on the left. Again, this doesn't mean that you have to agree with it from a policy standpoint. The point is that these kind of conversations just don't exist at all. The criticism doesn't exist. The scrutiny of the ideas doesn't exist. The reality that some people have faced enormous difficulty in their lives because of these ideas is sort of lost on those on the left, and they only know how to talk about the emotionalized stories that push for their policy agenda. And the reality is emotionalized stories go in every direction imaginable because that's how
Leslie
human
Corbly,
life works.
I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get the book and knows where to get it. So, folks, if you want to get a copy of the book, it comes out on the 21st of October. As you can tell, this is a lively conversation filled with information. Stay tuned. We're coming right back with
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdes. Happy Friday, everybody. I want to give a few shout-outs here. Tony in Montreal, WVMT. Joe in Salem. Roger in Evansville. Sandra in Hurley, New Mexico. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.